Susan Rice takes the heat off Devin Nunes in widening Russian intelligence investigation. The ever-sprawling investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election has produced a rolling cast of partisan political villains. For Democrats, the GOP chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes of California, has become a useful antagonist, given his questionable handling of evidence and the perception that he is too close to the White House to administer an even-handed probe. But the political seesaw pushed ever so slightly in the Republican direction this week due to the re-emergence of Susan Rice, the former national security advisor to President Barack Obama, who remains one of the most polarizing figures of the last administration. Rice was hoisted into the controversy after Bloomberg View's Eli Lake reported that she personally requested the unmasking of an unspecified number of people contained in intelligence reports who were related to Donald Trump's transition team and campaign. The original goal of the House and Senate congressional queries was to determine the scope of the Russian impact on the presidential campaign and whether anyone in Trump's political orbit colluded with a foreign entity to hamper Hillary Clinton's chances. But ever since Trump issued his still unproven and inflammatory claim a month ago that Obama wiretapped him, he's effectively muddied the waters of that focus. Nunes provided the president an assist when he indicated that some of Trump's transition team members were picked up during incidental surveillance of legal foreign targets. He seemed particularly perturbed about unmasking, noting that details about U.S. persons involved in the incoming administration with little or no apparent foreign intelligence value were widely disseminated in intelligence community reports. But he simultaneously undermined his independence by viewing evidence at the White House reportedly provided by Trump administration officials and not sharing it with other members of his committee. Nunes, a previously obscure congressman, became an instant cable television news fixation and a favored boogeyman of Democrats. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi of California dubbed him a dupe. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York called for his removal as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Even some Republicans expressed doubts about his credibility, like Representative Chris Collins of New York, who said Nunes needed to clear things up. Facing protests back in his home district in Central California and a brushfire inside the Beltway, Nunes has recently curbed his public appearances and so far survived the onslaught. And just in time came the political gift of Rice. Rice went on offense Tuesday, appearing on MSNBC with Andrea Mitchell to profess herself innocent of leaking names included in intelligence reports and arguing that any unmasking was approved by other intelligence officials and integral to her role as national security advisor. Sometimes in that context, in order to understand the importance of the report and assess its significance, it was necessary to find out or request the information as to who the U.S. official was, she said. She would not discuss particular cases of Flynn or anyone else due to the classified nature of these reports. This leaves open the possibility that she was privy to names of Trump-connected individuals swept up in intelligence gathering. Yet just 2 weeks ago she said on PBS she knew nothing about the potential surveillance of Trump officials. She did not repeat that claim to Mitchell but vigorously denied she used any names she unmasked for political purposes. It is interesting, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said. She was the one who went out and said she had nothing to do with this on a program a few weeks ago, and now I continue to see more and more reports. Once a close confidant of Obama, Rice was forced to withdraw herself as a leading candidate for Secretary of State in 2012 because of her public role in explaining the terrorist attack that killed 4 Americans in Benghazi, Libya. Rice was pummeled by Republicans for what they viewed as an intentionally misleading description of the September 11, 2012, attacks in the heat of a presidential campaign. She appeared on Sunday morning talk shows to describe the attack as a spontaneous anti-American demonstration that went awry. Later, the Obama administration acknowledged it was the work of organized terrorists, undercutting Rice's initial explanation. The insertion of Rice into the current investigation simply hands Republicans a convenient battering ram. It comes as conservatives, and the White House, are repurposing reports that Obama administration officials in the closing days of his presidency worked to spread information about the Trump team and its possible contacts with Russian interests, in part to leave a trail for investigators. Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, told conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt on Tuesday that Rice should be subpoenaed to testify before his committee. Susan Rice is the typhoid Mary of the Obama administration foreign policy. Every time something went wrong, she seemed to turn up in the middle of it, he said. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, who has led the charge against unwarranted surveillance, said Rice should be asked under oath if Obama directed her to request the unmaskings. And Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who falls on the opposite side of Paul's foreign policy spectrum, told Fox News he also wants more answers from Rice. When it comes to Susan Rice, you need to verify, not trust, he said. Rice was non-committal to Mitchell when she was asked if she would testify on Capitol Hill. A former lawyer for the National Security Council in a Republican administration backed up Rice's claim, telling U.S. News, "It is right, appropriate and legal to ask for U.S. identities in order to understand intelligence in the abstract." In his experience, which also involved legal work for the State Department, such unmasking or deminimized requests from top national security officials happened routinely, almost every couple of days. It's a summary of what may have happened in a telephone call or some intercept. The summary will then say in very unclear, opaque terms on April 4, the Russian ambassador called U.S. person number 1 to report on a conversation he had with U.S. person number 2 about a meeting with U.S. person number 3 or number 4 that could affect U.S.-Russian relations. You scratch your head and say, what? It's a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing and you're trying to figure out what the puzzle is about. Unmasking sounds sinister when it is, in fact, very normal, the national security attorney explains. Unfortunately, for those attempting to read the political motivations of such unmaskings, if there are any, it requires analyzing one's motives. To Republicans, Rice is immediately suspect given her closeness to Obama and her past misstatements. To Democrats, Republicans have all the reason to politicize Rice's role in order to distract from Trump's myriad of continually unraveling ties to the Kremlin. It'll be the work of the bipartisan and yet still inherently partisan Senate and House Intelligence Committees to get to the bottom of it. But there's a greater than not chance they won't. Could we ever know what's in that person's heart? The national security attorney says. Impossible. Please subscribe my channel.